So fellas, we've just had UFC Saudi Arabia with potentially the last fight of Izzy's career, with him getting knocked out by Nassourdine Imavov in quite an unexpected main event. We're going to be reviewing the card from top to bottom. I personally think it was a decent card. It wasn't a barn burner. It wasn't one of the best Saudi cards, but we are going to be reviewing it. Starting off with the first fight, Hamdy Abdelwahab versus Jamal Pogues. I thought this was a robbery. I thought this was a bad way to kick off the card. It reminded me of the last Abu Dhabi card that we had when Rinat Fakhretdinov got a robbery win. It was a bit of a boring fight. Nothing really happened. Abdelwahab won a decision, which I thought should have gone 29-28 to Jamal Pogues. But yeah, I thought this was a massive robbery. First round, Hamdy Abdelwahab cracks Jamal Pogues, takes him down. And then the rest of the round, nothing really happens. And then for the rest of the two rounds, they're both pretty hesitant, with Jamal Pogues just kind of doing about enough to outpoint him on the feet. But I thought Jamal Pogues should have won this fight. Hopefully he doesn't get cut from the UFC. And hopefully Hamdy doesn't get given a big fight. I thought this was a robbery, but yeah, I think Abdelwahab, the guy's got the fight IQ of a paper bag. You're this Greco-Roman Olympic wrestler. And he did, I think he shot one takedown the entire fight. That takedown actually happened to take down Jamal Pogues. And then for the rest of the fight, he did nothing. It wasn't even like he was active on the feet. He was pressuring Jamal Pogues, but he wasn't throwing anything. It was kind of like a pressuring punching bag. Terrible fight IQ. Didn't really shoot any takedowns, which he should have done for a Greco-Roman wrestler. But yeah, I thought Jamal Pogues won that. He was a more busy guy on the feet. He was landing the more shots on the feet. He actually had a good performance, did Jamal Pogues, against Hamdy, who I thought was going to win. But either way, good performance from Hamdy Abdelwahab. I guess. I don't know who we give him next, because that, I mean, I say that, yeah, in fact, no, it wasn't a good performance. I don't know why I'm saying it was a good performance. It wasn't a good performance. Terrible fight IQ. Shouldn't have won the fight. I don't even know if he's UFC worthy, to be fair, but either way, a bit of a boring fight. Hamdy Abdelwahab won a bit of a robbery decision. Then we had Bogdan Grad versus Lucas Alexander. Bogdan Grad gets the TKO in the second round. Grad is just a wild fighter, man. Good win from Bogdan Grad. He said he's going to be the next big thing in the featherweight division. I can't say I agree with that, because defensively he's not the best. You know, he pressures people off the bat. He's a bit of a crazy striker, and he showed that in his Contender Series career as well, where Lucas Alexander actually seemed to be kind of piecing him up on the feet. And even in the grappling exchanges, Bogdan Grad was easily getting countered. But yeah, very pressure heavy guys, Bogdan Grad. Wild guy, not defensively sound. I thought he was going to get knocked out, but then he managed to catch Lucas Alexander and get the knockout. So good win from Bogdan Grad. Crazy striker, fun to watch. Lucas Alexander did look good, but he came in, I think, 3.5 pounds overweight, so he's probably going to be forced to move to 155. I'm not sure who he faces at 155. It's not a case of I don't think he's UFC worthy. He's definitely UFC worthy. Took a bad loss, is what it is. Not a good week for Lucas Alexander. I also assume that the weight cut had something to do with the fact that he was a little bit chinny in that fight. Not really much else to talk about. Good win for Bogdan Grad. Then we had Jasmine Jasudavicious versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Jasmine Jasudavicious practically dominates Mayra Bueno Silva and picks up a decision. Now, I'm pretty sure I heard the commentator saying that Mayra Bueno Silva was working with the fighting nerds, and if that's the case, that might explain why Mayra Bueno Silva did kind of look sharp on the feet for the first round. But my main takeaway is, how the hell did Mayra Bueno Silva fight for a belt? She looks awful in there. She looks awful in the grappling exchanges. Her jiu-jitsu, I mean, she threatened a submission once or twice, but she was getting dominated in the grappling exchanges by a number 12 ranked fighter in a different division. On the feet, like I said before, she was tagging her on the feet at the beginning, but even then, Jasmine Jasudavicious, a heavy grappler, was starting to outland her in the second and the third round. I still don't understand how Mayra Bueno Silva was fighting for a belt last year. That kind of just shows the state of the women's bantamweight division. I don't really know what's next for Mayra Bueno Silva. Maybe we give her somebody in the top 15 to top 10 area of the flyweight division, if that's where she's going to stay. She kept complaining throughout the fight as well. But good win for Jasmine Jasudavicious overall. If she can sharpen up her striking, and it's not even a case of that she's got bad striking. She was, like I said before, she was outlanding Mayra Bueno Silva. I think she can be a real problem in the flyweight division. Like, she's got really good grappling. She's out-grappled nearly every single one of her opponents she's faced. Really dominant grappler. She had her in crucifix at one point as well. Good submissions, good control. She's one of the best women MMA grapplers right now, is Jasmine Jasudavicious. And like I said, if she can sharpen up her striking, you know, there's going to be big implications. Honestly, I think we give her somebody like Rose Namajunas next. She's just beat Mayra Bueno Silva, a former title challenger, top 5 in the bantamweight division. I think that deserves Jasmine Jasudavicious a top 5 fight in the flyweight division. Maybe like a fight before a number 1 contender fight. But dominant performance, takes down Mayra Bueno Silva, controls her for the majority of the fight, and even in the striking exchanges seem to be doing the better. So, big win for Jasmine Jasudavicious. Mayra Bueno Silva massively fell off since she lost that title fight. Then we had Terrance McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic. I told you in the prediction video that you should never bet on a Terrance McKinney fight to go past 1 round. He gets the TKO against Hadzovic. The second the fight starts, Off the bat, Terrance McKinney just starts pressuring Damir Hadzovic, throwing head kicks, going down the path with the 1-2. Eventually, Hadzovic tries taking him down. McKinney, I think he got like a guillotine at some point, which he ended up missing, and then just battered him with ground and pound. McKinney's such a dangerous fighter. He's the definition of like 100% dangerous, 100% vulnerable. Gets the TKO in the first round against Hadzovic. But yeah, like I said, never bet on McKinney's fights making it past the first. He honestly might be the guy to surpass Tom Aspinall in the shortest average fight time in the UFC. I think every single one of his fights have ended in the first and the second round. I don't know if he's ever gone... Yeah, he's never gone to a decision in his entire MMA career as well. It's either him getting finished early on or him picking up a finish. And I must say about Terrance McKinney, even though, like I said, he is a little bit chinny, the guy is an extremely entertaining guy. And again, it's a great win. I think he would legitimately be a big prospect at 155 if he wasn't so chinny, because he's got good grappling. He comes from like a wrestling background. He's got good submissions, and he's very sharp and dangerous on the feet, and he's fun to watch. He'd be a solid prospect, but again, he is a bit chinny. But good win for Terrance McKinney, putting out a guy like Hadzovic out there that quickly. Solid win for Terrance McKinney. I don't know who we give him next, but it's going to be, you know, quite a big name in the lightweight division. I assume not somebody ranked, because in his last fight before this, he got knocked out by Ribovics. But such a fun fighter as Terrance McKinney. No time to waste for Hadzovic. Probably going to end up getting cut from the UFC. He's been out for 3 years, comes back, gets finished in the first. I don't know how old he is, but yeah, good win for Terrance McKinney. Solid prospect. Then we had Shamil Gaziev versus Thomas Petersen. A fight between a ranked heavyweight and the Thomas Petersen. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding Shamil Gaziev, and he went out there and got the knockout in the first round. I predicted him to win by TKO, but I thought he was going to take him down and then maybe beating it with ground and pound. But Shamil Gaziev apparently has boxing like Canelo, or should I say boxing like Fury, out there just outboxing Thomas Petersen, who apparently had like a world champion boxer in his corner. Shamil Gaziev brutally knocks out Thomas. Well, I say brutally, but he knocks him out in the first round. Doesn't need to go for ground and pound because it's over. Yeah, heavy knockout from Shamil Gaziev. And I was saying this coming into it. I know there's a lot of memes and a lot of jokes about Shamil Gaziev because he's this massive human being. You know, he's got terrible stamina. But I honestly think, unironically, he's a good heavyweight prospect because he's got everything going for him. He's huge for the division. Like, the guy's massive, 260 pounds. He's not like a Thomas Petersen or, you know, one of these light heavyweights moving up. He's a huge heavyweight, is Shamil Gaziev. He's massive for the division. He towers over nearly everyone he fights. He's a good wrestler. Dominated Don Tailmates with wrestling. Well, as I said dominated, but was out wrestling Martin Badai. Comes from a bit of a wrestling background, so he's got good wrestling. Heavy-handed as well. If anything, he's more of a pressure boxer. He was roughing up Martin Badai. He was landing on Rosenstrike in the first round. He just knocked out Thomas Petersen. He's got everything going for him, and he's a fan favorite as well. A lot of people like Shamil Gaziev. He's got like a bit of a fan base going for him now as well in the heavyweight division. He's top 10 worthy in my opinion. I would honestly like to see like a Shamil Gaziev versus a Derek Lewis, just like a meme fight in the heavyweight division that actually has meaning to it, or maybe like a Sergei Spivak, because I think they're very similar in the sense that they're pressure boxers with a good grappling base. But massive win for Shamil Gaziev, 2-fight winning streak now. It's going to be a big fight in the rankings. I know he lost to Rosenstrike, but he's just beat Thomas Petersen. He's ranked already. Petersen was doing well. In fact, I would say he was winning the fight initially. He was outlanding Shamil Gaziev. Actually managed to take Shamil Gaziev down at one point, which I didn't expect. But yeah, just a good win from Shamil Gaziev. Like I said, I'd love to see him versus like Derek Lewis. Throw him in another fight night main event. Test his stamina because he looked good in that fight. Heavy-handed boxer. Powerful as fuck. I expected him to take down Thomas Petersen, but he didn't even have to. So, good win for Shamil Gaziev. Massive knockout. And, yeah, I can't wait to see what he does next. Then we had Naimov versus Kaan Ofli. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really watch this fight. I'm going to be basing this breakdown based off what I've saw. But based off what I've seen in the highlights, it was a good performance from Naimov. Just outclassing Kaan Ofli. But I will say an issue with Naimov is that he's making fights close with guys that he should be destroying. Like, I remember when he fought Felipe Lima on short notice and got submitted, and when he beat Nathaniel Wood, it was a controversial fight because of the amount of like referee interference that fight had. And now that he's going out there and beating Kaan Ofli, who in my opinion he should have, you know, destroyed, but that just didn't really seem to be the case. I shouldn't really be breaking this fight down. I didn't really watch it. Good win for Mohamed Naimov. Maybe we give him somebody in the rankings of the featherweight division, maybe like the loser of Yusuf Zalal and Calvin Kattar, or Edson Barboza and Steve Garcia. I'm not sure, but good win for Mohamed Naimov. Then we had the next fight on the main card, Fares Ziam versus Mike Davis. Really good win. Fares Ziam gets another decision win. I think he's on a 5-fight winning streak now in the 155 division. I say we give Fares Ziam somebody in the rankings. Give him like a Jalin Turner or even a Benoit, saying that he's like a Frenchman versus a Frenchman. Beats Mike Davis in good fashion as well. Fares Ziam isn't flawless, I'll say that, but it was a great fight from both of them. It was a bloodbath. Fares Ziam, I think it was in the second round, ended up cutting Mike Davis really badly from elbows. And then in the third round, towards the end of the third round, Mike Davis reversed Fares Ziam and started slashing him with elbows too. So it ended up being a bit of a bloodbath, a back and forth fight. fight. I think if Ziam works on his wrestling defense, he's going to be a huge problem because he's got everything going for him. At first, he was a bit of a point fighter who didn't really want to take risks, and since the Matt Frivola fight, he's definitely a lot more risk-taking on the feet, and I feel like that's benefited him. He's a dangerous striker, really good in the clinch, good wrestling offense. I think the only problem with Ziam is his grappling defense, so I think if he can work on his defense in the grappling, it's going to be a huge problem at 155, and that's why I think a fight against somebody like Jalin Turner could be so good, because he doesn't have to worry about the wrestling. It's just two guys who are probably going to stand up, and if anyone's going to take it to the mat, it's going to be Ziam. So he's a big prospect at 155. I'd actually go out there and say, apart from maybe Yoel Alvarez, he's the best unranked fighter in 155. And for Mike Davis, he didn't look terrible out there. You know, he was probably out wrestling Ziam for a good majority of the fight. But either way, it was a really fun fight between the two of them. Give Ziam a ranked fight. Wasn't a bad performance from Mike Davis as well. Like, he nearly submitted Ziam as well with a calf slasher at one point. He's a very good grappler as Mike Davis, but either way, I'm loving this Ziam. I remember when Ziam used to be labeled a boring fighter, when he was fighting the likes of Jai Herbert and Claudio Puelles, and his game plan was kind of just leg kick people and keep them in the clinch. But it seems like ever since that Matt Frivola fight, he's kind of taken a lot more risks, and I'm a fan of Ziam now. He's in a lot of these fun fights, so good win for Ziam. Hopefully he gets a ranked fighter soon. But overall, it was a good fight. Then we had Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. Another really good fight, in my opinion. They were both extremely exhausted in that third round, but Vinicius Oliveira picks up a decision win in the third round. Good performance from Vinicius Oliveira. Said Nurmagomedov reminds me a lot of Zabit Magomedsharipov. He reminds me a lot of Zabit, both from like that Dagestan area, both very flashy strikers. Said Nurmagomedov was a very flashy striker. Coming into this fight, Oliveira was the one labelled as this unorthodox striker, but if anyone was showing that, it was Said Nurmagomedov. These spinning back fists, these spinning roundhouse kicks in the beginning of the first round. He was very crafty early on. Good submission game as well. Obviously has that signature guillotine, which he attempted twice, and also has a terrible gas tank. I feel like if there's any fighter nowadays that you can really compare to Zabit Magomedsharipov, Said Nurmagomedov is that guy. But yeah, very fun guy to watch is Said Nurmagomedov. The only flaw that he really has is, first of all, his wrestling. It's not often you talk about a Dagestani without any wrestling, but Said Nurmagomedov is one of those guys. Oliveira was out wrestling him, and also his gas tank. After the second round, he was completely done, so he needs to work on his stamina. But good game plan for Vinicius Oliveira. Apparently his game plan was to wear out Said Nurmagomedov, which seemed to work. It was just a fun fight between the two of them. They were both having success on the feet, mainly Said Nurmagomedov, and in the grappling exchanges, that was where Oliveira was doing the better. I feel like if Oliveira had a little bit more tank in that third round, he could have potentially finished Nurmagomedov, because Nurmagomedov was all over the place. But yeah, I think we've got to give somebody ranked now for Vinicius Oliveira. He's 3-0 in the UFC, got a knockout of the year contender at the beginning of 2024 against Sapai, Styles on what's his name, Ricky Simon, and now he's just beating Said Nurmagomedov as an underdog. I think we give him somebody in the rankings, maybe like a Kyler Phillips, because he's a good prospect, good grappling, really fun striker. And for Said Nurmagomedov, I think we'll just keep putting him in fun fights in the unranked area of the featherweight and in the bantamweight division, because he's a fun striker. Like I said before, with a good submission ability. It's just when it gets past the second round, he struggles. But either way, good fight, good win for Vinicius Oliveira, and he's a prospect to look out for in the bantamweight division. Then we had Sergei Pavlovich versus Rosenstrike. Pavlovich has now suddenly turned into a wrestler and out-wrestles Rosenstrike to win a fairly uneventful decision. I was expecting this to be one of those fights where it's like, you know, someone's going to get knocked out. But that wasn't really the case. There were times when Pavlovich had success, but it was only momentarily. And it was overall just a bit of an underwhelming fight. I didn't see this fight going the distance. I thought Pavlovich was going to stop him in the first, and if he didn't stop him in the first, it was going to be Rosenstrike piecing him up. But the majority of the fight, the vast majority of the fight, was just both of them kind of feeling each other out, both of them kind of feinting, not really doing anything. And then when one of them would go in, it would kind of just be a leg kick or Pavlovich landing something on Rosenstrike and then taking him down. But yeah, a bit of an underwhelming fight. It is good to see a new side of Pavlovich's game, though, because I remember a lot of people were talking about Pavlovich having this big Greco-Roman wrestling background, and now that he's actually shown that he's got wrestling, it's good to see that from Pavlovich. He's evolving as a fighter. You can call it boring as you want, but at the end of the day, he's a scary, powerful striker, and implementing wrestling is only going to make him more of a dangerous fighter, especially beating a guy like Rosenstrike, who was on a 2-fight winning streak. But yeah, they both looked very hesitant. I would have liked to see a bit more from Rosenstrike. I think he's a very hesitant fighter in general. You can even go back to his fight with Shamil Gaziev and see how hesitant he is. But yeah, Pavlovich looks super sharp. Even though it was a bit of a boring performance, it wasn't a bad performance. Maybe he's lost that aura that he did pre-Aspinall, but either way, good win for Sergei Pavlovich. Implemented the wrestling, was doing the better on the feet, was a bit hesitant, was a bit boring, but either way, got the win, did what he needed to do. And for Rosenstrike, I don't know what it is about Rosenstrike. He kind of has this, similar to like guys like Sergei Spivak, he kind of just reminds me of one of these heavyweights that doesn't really want to win. Like in every one of his fights, he does the bare minimum. He'll throw a leg kick, he'll pop out his jab, but apart from that, he doesn't really have any urgency to win a fight, and I don't really understand his mindset, Rosenstrike. So either way, good win for Pavlovich, coming back into the winning column. Didn't do it in brutal fashion like he normally does, but either way, got the win. Then we had the co-main event, Michael Venom Page versus Shara Magomedov. MVP, outstrike Shara Magomedov, and I was saying this coming into the fight. Shara Magomedov was a good striker, but it isn't like he was flawless in his UFC career. Antonio Chacoli had moments, and we knew he had grappling problems as well. Did Shara Magomedov, and even in that fight with Arman Petrosian, he was getting pieced up early on. And MVP, he didn't piece up Shara Magomedov, but he was doing about enough to win the decision. It wasn't a banger. A lot of people looking at this fight saying it's going to be a massive striking fight, it's going to be a complete banger. Michael Venom Page, I don't mean to critique him as a fighter, and I'm not saying he's a boring fighter in general, but I feel like he's overrated when it comes to entertainment. Like, people talk about MVP as if he's one of the most entertaining strikers in the UFC, and he's not. The majority of MVP is just him stancing with that karate stance where he's bouncing up and down. In fact, in the space of about 1 minute, he'll have about 1 or 2 moments in that entire minute where he might shoot in for a 1-2 down the pipe or a body kick, but the majority of MVP is just him hopping in that karate stance. There's not really much going on. He's not really an output striker. He just kind of comes in bursts and then he'll disappear for a bit. So it wasn't a banger. It was still a decent fight. You know, two elite strikers. You knew that it could end at any moment, and they both had a couple of moments. Shara Magomedov shooting, cracking him with those leg kicks, MVP darting in and out, but it wasn't necessarily a banger. I just can't imagine, but MVP is so tricky on the feet. He's going to be one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. Styles on Kevin Holland, outstrikes and takes the O away from Shara Magomedov. I'd love to see him versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I know we talked about saying that middleweight was a one-off fight and he wants to go back down to the welterweight division, and if that's the case, then I guess we do MVP versus Stephen Thompson. I think that could be quite a decent fight on the feet. Again, I'm not going to say it's going to be a banger because two karate-heavy guys isn't probably going to be a banger, but he's just so tricky to beat on the feet. It looks hard to he just looks hard to touch on the feet. You can't land on MVP. He's always out of distance, and then when he's in distance, he's out immediately again. And in terms of Shara Magomedov, he's a fun striker, but he's not really ranked worthy. I even said after he beat Arman Petrosian, beating Arman Petrosian shouldn't really give you a ranking spot in the middleweight division. Now that he's lost to MVP, I expect him to be kicked out of the rankings, but he's a fun striker. I think there's a lot of fun fights for Shara Magomedov, like him versus Chris Curtis, him versus Cesar Almeida, him versus Roman Kopylov. There's a lot of fun fights for Shara Magomedov in the middleweight division. A lot of bangers that I think you could put him in. Like, imagine him versus Roman Kopylov. That's a dream fight. But good win for MVP. One of the best strikers in the UFC. Not one of the most entertaining strikers in the UFC, which I'm sick of people calling him, but it was still a good win. Got the win against the seasoned striker in Shara Magomedov. And I want to see what he does in the welterweight division. Give him a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And then the main event. Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov. I don't think anyone saw that coming. Adesanya was, in my opinion, clearly winning that first round. He was landing the better shots on Nasruddin Imavov. Imavov might have cracked Izzy every now and then, but the point was Adesanya was outstriking him. Even nearly took Imavov down at one point, and then out of nowhere in that second round, Imavov cracks Izzy and knocks him out. I know there's a few people saying early stoppage. That wasn't an early stoppage. Imavov dropped him, landed another shot, basically face-planted Izzy like it was Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Kevin Holland, and then was like ground and pounding him for like 5 seconds. So that is a massive win for Imavov. Knocking out Israel Adesanya in the second round. I even said if Imavov was going to win, it's not going to be by knockout, but he went out there and knocked out Izzy. The only other guy to knock out Izzy in the UFC apart from Pereira, and he did it in better fashion too. So massive win for Imavov. That might be it for Izzy though. Like, he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights. He's nowhere near the title picture. He gets finished by Poatan, gets a massive win over Poatan, then gets dominated by Strickland, submitted by Dricus, and now he's been knocked out by Imavov. It gets to the point when, what is next for Adesanya? He's 30, I think he's like 37 years old. He's probably going to be ranked, I don't know what he's going to be ranked, but he's going to be far from a title shot nowadays. Unless he wants to fight like a Roman Delete or someone lower down in the top 10. That might be it for Adesanya. But that is a massive win for Imavov. I say we give Imavov a title shot. Now, here's the problem with the middleweight division. Obviously, Strickland's getting the next title shot. And we've also got Khamzat Chimaev. So Imavov's going to be waiting in the queue if he does win a title fight. But either way, that's a great win. To knock out a former champion, a guy who was a favourite coming into this fight, one of the best strikers in the UFC, people will call him. And to knock him out in that fashion is a massive win for Nasruddin Imavov. He's on this big winning streak. He's only lost in the UFC. I think he's lost to Phil Hawes, but apart from that, his only loss is Sean Strickland himself. So He's definitely a title contender now with Imavov. Massive win. And for Adesanya, if he wants to stay in the UFC, give him like a Roman Dolidze or something like that. I'm not really sure what's next for Izzy because he's now going to be away from the title picture. Maybe it's retirement for Adesanya, I'm not too sure. But either way, statement-making win from Imavov. Knocked out Adesanya. Big win. But those are my thoughts on UFC Saudi Arabia. I thought it was a decent fight night. Wasn't one of the better Saudi Arabia cards we've had before. But either way, massive win for Imavov. Pretty solid card. Thank you for watching.